7 times, the U.S. Army carried this man off a battlefield. 7 times, he walked back onto it. September 3rd, 1944. A grenade in each hand, sprinting straight at a German machine gun outside a Belgian village, when a bullet tears through his throat. His own men drag him 100 yards through mud, under fire. A doctor cuts an emergency tracheotomy into his neck, right there in the field. A chaplain reads him his last rites. He does not die. The Germans already had a name for him by then. Not a rank, a nickname, the Ghost. Because nothing, as far as anyone could tell, actually killed this man. The Army eventually gave him the medal he'd earned for this, 36 years late. Arlington National Cemetery now ranks him as decorated as Audie Murphy, the most famous American soldier of the entire war. And still, almost nobody has ever heard his name. It's Matt Urban. Everything that follows comes straight from his Medal of Honor citation, U.S. Army records, and sworn statements from the men who watched him do this, again and again, for 88 days straight. Buffalo, New York, August 25, 1919. That's where Matthew Louis Urbanowitz was born, to a Polish immigrant plumbing contractor named Stanley and his wife Helen. 3 brothers came with the family. One of them, Eugene, didn't make it past childhood. Appendicitis took him in 1927. East High School, class of 1937. Then Cornell that fall. History and government, with a minor in community recreation. ROTC filled his afternoons, along with track and boxing, and a fraternity house full of Kappa Delta Rho brothers. June 14, 1941. Diploma in hand. 8 days after that, a second lieutenant's commission, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, July 2nd, active duty, platoon leader, D Company, 2nd Battalion, 60th Infantry Regiment, 9th Infantry Division. 21 years old. 5 months later, Pearl Harbor changed the tone of everything at Fort Bragg overnight. November 8, 1942. Operation Torch. The invasion of North Africa, and Matt Urban's first day in combat. A raft, open water, enemy fire, and one other soldier beside him going in. A Purple Heart and a Silver Star came out of that single day. He wasn't even 23 yet. Tunisia chewed men up. Rocky ground, deep gorges, an enemy that knew every inch of it. At Macnassy, a wound. Refusal to be evacuated followed immediately by a combat patrol. His own idea. Later, as American lines buckled under a German counterattack and started falling back, one man didn't. A German soldier came at him. A trench knife ended that. Then Urban picked up the dead man's machine pistol and turned it on the rest of them, coming through the smoke. Sergeant Earl G. Evans, who served beside him, wrote the moment down years afterward, plain and simple. As our outfit was falling back, the major held his ground and grabbed the closest German. He killed him with a trench knife, took the German's machine pistol, and fired at the onrushing enemy. Grenade shrapnel caught him during that same fight. It didn't stop him either. July 28, 1943. The 60th Infantry left Africa aboard the USS Orizaba, Palermo, Sicily, 3 days sailing away. Before Urban's unit had even set foot on land, German Stukas dropped out of the sky on the morning of August 1st and went after the ship itself. The anti-aircraft cruise spotter caught a burst of machine gun fire where he stood. Urban grabbed the man's binoculars off the deck and took over the job himself. When that same Stuka circled back for another run, the gun crew put it in the water. Further inland, a fortified German mountain position had the 1st Infantry Division stuck cold, unable to force it head-on. Different orders came down for the 60th. Cross those mountains at night, undetected, with Moroccan Goumier fighters alongside, and hit the Germans from behind instead. 4,000 men, pack mules included, moving single file through total darkness, Urban's company leading the way. It worked. Caught from a direction they never expected, the Germans abandoned Troina and pulled back toward Randazzo. A frontal assault on that mountain would have cost hundreds of American lives. This cost none. Sicily fell on August 20th. A silver star followed on September 5th, pinned on him right there on the island. That November, the whole division shipped back to England. Rest, resupply, and months of training for whatever was coming across the channel. Utah Beach, June 11th, 1944. 5 days after D-Day itself, the beach secure by then, but the fighting inland only getting uglier by the hour. 3 days later, near a village called Renouf, F Company walked straight into heavy small arms and tank fire. The man carrying the company bazooka went down. Urban picked the weapon up off the ground, talked the dead gunner's ammo carrier into following him, and the two of them worked their way forward through the hedgerows, those thick earthen banks and brush that turned every field in Normandy into somebody's private fortress. Close enough to fire, completely exposed to do it. Both tanks destroyed. The company surged forward. The enemy broke. Later that same day, outside Orglandes, a German tank crew spotted him before he could raise the bazooka again. 37 millimeters of direct fire caught his left leg. A medic patched him up on the spot. Evacuation, he refused. Command of the company continued from a stretcher, carried, sitting up, by his own men, from position to position. The next morning brought a second wound, this one to his right forearm. This time the battalion doctor made the call. Evacuation to a field hospital surgical tent, where 2 surgeons worked on his shattered calf by lantern light, before a troop carrier took him across to England. Recovering there in July, he started hearing from his own battalion's wounded as they arrived. How bad the hedgerows had gotten, how desperately the unit needed officers who'd actually seen combat. Rather than wait out his recovery stateside, he took over training 40 replacement soldiers bound for Normandy himself. When they shipped out, so did he. Utah Beach again, July 25th. He dropped the 40 men off for combat duty that morning, and then, instead of turning back toward England, started hitchhiking, a cane he'd carved himself doing the work his leg couldn't, heading toward his old unit near Saint-Lô, just as Operation Cobra, the breakout from Normandy, was about to kick off with the 9th Division out front. He found the 2nd Battalion pinned flat, stopped cold by German machine guns and an anti-tank gun. On his way in, he pulled a wounded tank driver clear of a burning Sherman, seconds before it went up. Then came a second tank, engine running, gun crew gone, dead in the crossfire. The driver was still inside. A tank platoon lieutenant told him. That lieutenant went for the turret and was cut down instantly. A sergeant tried next. Same result. So Urban crawled the last stretch himself, through the fire that had just killed 2 men, and hauled himself up onto the turret. Full throttle, he told the driver. As the tank lurched into motion, completely exposed on top of the armor, he took the 50 caliber machine gun and tore into the German position with it. An anti-tank gun opened up on him directly and somehow missed. Behind him, the rest of the battalion watched, rallied, and surged forward. Bayonets after that, hand to hand. German soldiers started surrendering in clusters. From a command post on the next hill over, Battalion Commander Major Max L. Wolfe watched the whole thing through binoculars. The recommendation for the Medal of Honor started that same afternoon. Sergeant Evans, the same man who'd written down the trench knife killing back in Tunisia, put this moment on paper too, in a letter to the Pentagon a year later. Urban moved forward, and damned if the U.S. Army didn't move forward also. He bellied up to the tank, and amid heavy gunfire scrambled aboard and manned the machine gun. The driver took heart with Urban aboard. The tank roared forward, and Urban tore the hillside apart with that gun. August 2nd, a shell fragment to the chest, missing his heart by inches. Evacuation, refused, again. August 6th, near Cherbourg, Major Wolfe was killed in action. Command of the entire battalion fell to Urban that same day. He was 24 years old. August 15th brought another wound. He stayed anyway. September 2nd, 1944, loaned out to another division, the 2nd Battalion dug in a mile outside Philippeville, Belgium. A brigadier general's orders: take the town at first light. That night, Urban and 2 other men went out to look at what they'd actually be walking into. What they found was an entire German regiment, dug in deep, machine guns and tanks and anti-aircraft guns, all aimed straight down the single road leading in. Artillery cover finally came through the next morning, and the attack went in behind it. Straight at a forward machine gun position, a grenade in each hand. And this is where the story started. 2 soldiers, 100 yards, mud, machine gun fire, plasma, a tracheotomy in the field, a priest's last rites over a man everyone assumed was already gone. September 4th, he was carried off the battlefield on a litter. He didn't die. Weeks passed in a field hospital in France, then in England. October 2nd, 1944. Still flat on his back, came a promotion to major. That December, granted leave for a sightseeing trip to Scotland, he went the other direction entirely. Back to his old battalion, now at Camp Elsenborn, Germany. His men hadn't seen him since the litter. Most of them figured he was dead. He walked in unable to speak above a whisper, a bullet wound still healing in his throat, and put in a written request for a combat assignment. Denied, on medical grounds. They let him stay until the battalion pulled out of Elsenborn. After that, England, for good. The Army medically retired him on February 26, 1946. Liberty Magazine's Veterans View Bulletin took him on as a staff writer, later an editor, from October 1945 through October 1947. Somewhere in that stretch, the paperwork changed too. Matty Urbanowitz became, legally, Matt Urban. Port Huron, Michigan, made him Recreation Director in 1949. Monroe, Michigan, took over from there in 1956 and kept him running its community center until 1972. Basketball, baseball, football, year after year, plus a boxing program that produced multiple National Golden Gloves champions. Chairman of the Michigan Olympic Boxing Committee came next, and through the Chicago Olympic Committee, one of 3 trainers who personally escorted a young fighter named Cassius Clay, the man the world would later know as Muhammad Ali, to his Olympic tryouts in San Francisco, was Matt Urban. From 1972 until 1989, Holland, Michigan, had him running its recreation department. A camp for underprivileged kids, built and directed by his own hand. Boys Club director, Cub Scout Cub Master, years with the Red Cross, the Amateur Softball Association, the Boy Scouts of America. The same man who'd once climbed onto a burning tank under machine gun fire spent 4 decades afterward coaching children in a small Michigan town, and almost none of them had any idea who was standing in front of them. Back in 1945, Sergeant Evans' letter recommending Urban for the Medal of Honor had reached his division commander in occupied Germany. Somewhere after that, it vanished. Urban himself never learned any of it had happened. Early 1979, a disabled American veterans representative in Michigan, who'd come to know Urban personally over the years, sent Army headquarters a simple question. Whatever became of that recommendation? The digging turned it up. Major Max Wolfe had started it himself. Evans had carried it forward, in writing. days before Wolf was killed. 35 years later, it was still sitting in a file, untouched. July 10, 1980, the White House called. Medal of Honor. July 18th, a Pentagon ceremony. Army Chief of Staff Edward C. Meyer pinned on the Legion of Merit, a bronze star with V device, and a 7th Purple Heart. A separate ceremony at the French Embassy added the Croix de Guerre with bronze star, a citation, it turned out, signed back in June of 1944 by General Charles de Gaulle himself, and never once delivered until that day. July 19, 1980. Several hundred people watching, more than a few of them 9th Infantry Division veterans who'd fought beside him. President Jimmy Carter placed the Medal of Honor around Matt Urban's neck. 36 years, almost to the week, after the actions that earned it. March 4, 1995, Holland, Michigan. 75 years old. A collapsed lung took him in the end, tied back, by most accounts, to old war wounds that never fully left. Arlington National Cemetery holds his grave. Add it all up, the Medal of Honor, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 3 Bronze Star Medals, 7 Purple Hearts, 14 separate decorations for valor in combat. For 30 years, exactly 1 American soldier from World War II outranked him in decorations. Audie Murphy. Once Urban's full record finally came to light, Arlington itself lists the 2 men as equals. A sports complex in Holland, Michigan, carries his name today. So does a community center back in Buffalo, where it all started. A bridge in Monroe County, Michigan, runs past thousands of drivers a day who coached under him, or whose kids did, or who've simply never heard the name at all. Most of them have no idea how many times the United States Army watched this particular man get carried off a battlefield, and how many times, against every reasonable expectation, he came back anyway.